Thank you for listening to the Shanghai Community Fellowship Podcast. To find out more about the SCF community, listen to sermons, and upcoming events, visit us at shanghaifellowship.org. And Merry Christmas to all of you again. And that's, as Sue said, one of my favorite times also when the children come and sing and kind of reminds us that we are in the season that we are in. And we are in speaking of being in things, we are in a series here on Sundays looking at the ministry of Jesus. And we're going to take a look today at the ministry of Jesus and his patience, but not just, we're not actually going to spend much time on the patience of Jesus. We're going to really talk more about our patience, or maybe the lack of it. So we'll see as we come on here. So, of course, Christmas is the time that we celebrate the birth of Jesus, and we celebrate the birth of Jesus as the Messiah. And that's what we're remembering, that the Messiah came when Jesus came, because that's who Jesus is. He's the Messiah. He's the Anointed One. Now, that may be a title that is not familiar to you. Jesus, you may know, but you don't know anything about the possibility or the fact, actually, that he is the Messiah. So the Messiah was a person or a role that was described in the Bible of a person who would come and he would be anointed by God to represent God and to bring God's kingdom to the earth. I mean, there's all kinds of things that we could be talking about in just that title or that role of the Messiah. That's who Jesus is, and that's what he's brought. And as I said, literally it means the Anointed One. And the Bible, especially the first half of the Bible, is filled with literally hundreds of predictions and prophecies and promises about this person called the Messiah or the Anointed One. In fact, I guess statistically, and I'm not a statistician, but it's quite remarkable to think that one person could fulfill like literally hundreds of these predictions and prophecies, and yet that's exactly what happens in the person of Jesus. Now, some of these descriptions about the Anointed One or the Messiah that Jesus would fulfill were predictions about how the Anointed One or the Messiah would be a king. I mean, like literally a king, very strong, powerful, with a lot of authority, undefeatable. Some of the descriptions of the Messiah, in addition to Jesus or the Anointed One being a king, powerful, strong, and undefeatable, also describe his impact on the environment, for example. And there's a lot there that we could unpack, especially in Isaiah chapter 35, if you want to go take a look more at that. And some of these descriptions about Jesus or the Messiah or the Anointed One describe what he is going to do for us. And here I want to quote from Isaiah 35 in this way. There's, again, a lot there. I've just picked out a few verses. With this news, that is, the news that the Anointed One, the Messiah, this person that God has chosen, has come, we should experience that our hands are strengthened. With this news, strengthen those who have tired hands, encourage those who have weak knees, say to those, because Jesus has come, by the way, that's the context, say to those with fearful hearts, be strong and do not fear, for your God is coming to destroy your enemies. He is coming to save you. And again, I just picked out a few. If I'd encourage you to go take a look at Isaiah 35, there's more describing the person of Jesus and what he will do for us and how he is with us. And it's quite beautiful and encouraging. Now, these prophecies and promises, in addition to describing the strength of the Anointed One, the strength of Jesus, his impact on the environment, or what he will do for us, many of these prophecies, predictions, and promises also describe how he will suffer, how he will be rejected, and how he will die a death quite severe, tragically, and he will die for us. And the thing is that as Jesus came, many people had expectations about this person, and as they looked at Jesus, they didn't see right away that he was a king. He didn't appear to be very powerful, although he did great miracles and taught with great authority. They didn't necessarily see his immediate impact on the environment. Deserts were still deserts. Dry beds of rivers were still dry beds of rivers. But his impact in his healing ministry and his life-giving words and his life-giving presence, they could see. And Jesus knew that the promises and the prophecies and the predictions that he would suffer were going to be really difficult for his followers. Because they loved him so much, they saw the power of God in his life. They saw the promise of God that things really will change in Jesus, and yet he is suffering. He knows that when they see him suffer and die on the cross, this will be a tremendous test for them. They're going to be really, really tested by this. In fact, there's one point where Jesus would say to one of his disciples, a man named Simon, these words that he could have said to any of them. He said, Simon, Satan has asked to sift all of you as wheat. But I have prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. You see, Jesus knew that his suffering and death, now we're not just talking about his birth anymore. Those days are behind us. He's already been born. The angels have already sung, but he grew up to be God's Savior, God's anointed one. And Jesus knew that when he suffered and died, those who loved him most and knew him best would suffer through this. This would be a great test for them. Some of them maybe would even say, I can't handle this. This test is just too hard. I can't stay with Jesus anymore. And so he says to them, listen, I know you're going to be tested, Simon and the rest of you. I have prayed for you because I know you're going to be tested. Now, not many years later, after the death and resurrection and ascension of Jesus, Jesus' brother James would write a reflection on some of the things Jesus said to his disciples about what we do when we are tested, how we respond to the testing of life, the tests that come in life. And here's what James had to say. He wrote, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds," or you can say tests of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish the work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking in anything. And then down to verse 12, it's from chapter 1. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. Then a couple chapters later, in chapter 5, he goes into more detail right here. In chapter 5, verse 7, he says, be patient. Be patient then, brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rains. You too be patient and stand firm, because the Lord's coming is near. Don't grumble against one another, brothers and sisters, or you will be judged. The judge is standing at the door. Brothers and sisters, as an example of patience in the face of suffering, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. As you know, we count as blessed those who have persevered. You have heard of Job's perseverance and have seen what the Lord finally brought about. The Lord is full of compassion and mercy. You know, I heard it said many years ago that if you're not currently being tested, then you have been in a test, or a test is coming. All right, I think everybody in this room here has had enough life experience that you've had some times and seasons in your life where you were being tested. Now, I'm not talking about the Gaokao here, you know. And I'm not talking about your SAT or whatever other kind of test they offered when you were in high school trying to get into university, the MCAT or the LCAT. I'm not talking about that kind of test. A time where you were tested in a way that it was testing your trust in God. I'm talking to people who are followers of Jesus now. You were tested in a way you wondered, has God lost track of me? Is God real? Does he care for me? Can he do? Is he really as strong as I thought he was? You were really being tested. Your faith in him was really being tested. Times of distress, like in health problems. Health problems can do that for us. a little cold and a little flu every now and then, and we get over it in a couple of days, we're like, oh, we're good. But you let that health issue continue on for days and then weeks or in months, and we start to become tested in this. And not just for us. Sometimes the testing isn't just because we're struggling with health problems, but because somebody we love is struggling with health issues. And we're being tested as we go through this, and we are asking God, calling out to God, what's going on? Sometimes it's our losses, our setbacks, things that we planned for, things that we prepared for. We said, this is a no-lose thing, man. It's going to work. And then it doesn't. You counted on someone, you planned as well as you could, you prayed about it, you got into it, and it just fell apart. And what you hoped for and what you dreamed about, it just didn't happen, and you were left with a lot of questions, including what happened to God. And your trust in Him was being tested, severely tested. Or the oppression that comes, the spiritual oppression that comes. We're following Jesus and giving our lives to Him as best we can, and yet we feel the enemy of our souls is working day and night against us. And we think, wow, how long is this test going on, and how long can I stand up on my feet? And there's a point, actually, in James chapter 4, the first few verses of chapter 5, there's a test going on specifically in James's church, because those who are great wealth were getting away with things that you can get away with when you have great wealth. And those without wealth and those who were poorer were just left with, oh, well, I guess we just have to accept this, because we don't have the money to make any difference or to change the unjust situation that we are in. Times that we are being tested. Sometimes we're being tested because of our faith in Jesus. We're trying to follow Him. We are following Him, and we're paying a price for that. And we are being tested. Our challenge here today, as it was for the community that James wrote to all those years ago, is our challenge is that we need to see that that in these tests, God is working. That in the tests of our lives, God is actually doing a good thing. God is actually, it's not that we go looking for tests. It's not that we welcome tests. Yeah, bring on another test. I love it. It's not that. It's not a stoicism, kind of like, I have no feelings. These tests don't mean anything. I never respond. It's just that we know and believe, because our trust is in this providential God, that these tests, God is working out something good in us. This is His way of shaping and doing that good work that we believe that God is doing in us. He's doing it through these tests. And that perspective is not automatic. It's a choice. The perspective that God is working even in the tests of my life, and that He is working about my good and my character development as He shapes me more and more into the image of His own dear Son, is a choice that I make by faith. Now today, in the few moments that we have left, I want to take a look at two things that we're going to need to know to make good choices when we are being tested. And here's the first one. We need to know that patience and endurance, these are good qualities, which we are going to need to live a fruitful life and for Christ. And endurance and patience are qualities of our character that we're going to need to not only live a fruitful life in the kingdom, but we're going to need patience, endurance to finish the race. How many know that being a Christian and a follower of Jesus isn't a seasonal thing? Oh yeah, I was a follower of Jesus in my 20s. It was really cool. Then I moved on to something else. That's not worth the way. When you start following Jesus, it's a lifelong path. It's a lifelong following, because there's a big prize at the end. You're on your way to finish the course. You're on your way to the eternity that God has promised you. And we want to finish the race that we have begun. And the qualities that we need in our character, we're going to need patience, and we're going to need the quality of endurance. And these things come about in our lives because of the tests, because God is at work in these tests, providentially and lovingly. These qualities must be developed in the refiner's fire, or a test like this is like what happens in a refiner's fire. So Proverbs 27:21 says, the crucible for silver and the furnace for gold, but people are tested by their praise. Actually, what that means is that another way that we're tested is what we do when people praise us. How do we respond? When people are like, oh, you're awesome, you're great, you're magnificent, you're wonderful. Maybe it's not just false praise, maybe it's genuine praise. Maybe you really are being rewarded for the good things that you're doing or the good work that you're doing. As you're being elevated and lifting up, and the world is lifting you up, and you're being acknowledged for all that you can and should do. This is not how are we responding, and what do we do when we give praise? Interesting, Proverbs talks about the way we receive praise and give praise is yet another area of our lives where we are often tested. And what God is saying through these words is that the testing that we go through is like a precious metal going through the refiner's fire, like a goldsmith or a silversmith, working with these precious metals, putting them into the fire so that what you come out of that fire is the purity of the gold that went in. You went into the fire, and as God is working you through the refiner's fire, you're coming out as pure gold, as pure silver. And here's the good news. If you're in a test, God knows that there's good gold in you. He's got you going. He's got you through this test. He's running you through this test because He knows already there's something inside of you that He is going to refine. He already knows that there's something good in you that He is going to refine. All the way at the very beginning, when He makes us, He says, this is good. Don't forget that when the day that you were born, the day that you were formed, the day that you breathed your first breath, God looked at you and I and said, now that's good. Now that's good. We forget that. We grow up. We go to school. We get bad grades. We don't get into the cool group. We don't make the soccer team or football team if you're from someplace else in the United States. And we get our first job. We don't do as well. We might get fired. We don't get the scholarship. We start to think maybe I'm not so good. And we forget along the way that our Father in heaven, just you being you, was enough for Him to say, you are good. But a lot has happened from those days until now. And what He's doing is putting us through the refiner's fire. So what is really, really good will show. We are that gold. The Apostle Paul had this chronic problem. There's lots of debate over what he had. Was it something physical? Was it a chronic a spiritual oppression? He doesn't ever actually say. But he says he's got this problem, and that he's facing it every day for him was a test. So here's somebody in the Bible who knows what it's like to get up every day and face a test. All right? And he prays to God. He said, God, I just can't take this anymore. You've got to remove this test from me. And here's what Paul says as he reflected on what God said to him in answer to that prayer. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. In your test, Paul, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, Paul would write, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. Paul's test revealed a grace and a strength in him that he did not know he had. That test revealed that God had given him and deposited in him a grace and a strength that he did not know he had. It's like kind of going through your closet in the spring and finding a blouse or a shirt that you didn't know you had. Oh, I forgot I bought that on sale a year ago. Oh, and you're super excited about it, right? I didn't know I had that. Well, God is putting us through a test. Why? So that we can see what He's already deposited in us. Paul found grace, and Paul found strength in his test. Patience, by the way, I don't know how that word strikes you. When you hear the word patience, I realize I'm speaking in English. I can't say patience right now in another language, but in English, it might strike you as being passive. Oh, we're being called to be patient. That's kind of like doing nothing. That's just kind of like being a beanbag chair, like just kind of there, patient. Stuff happens to you, you have no thoughts, you have no energy, you're not proactive. Patience is not being passive. Can I make that clear? Patience is not being passive. Here's another way to describe patience. It's a heroic endurance. Patience is a rugged determination. It's more than just this quiet acceptance, or neither is it kind of a silly, you've lost your head kind of wistful fantasy. Oh, I'm sure it's all going to work out in the end. I don't know. It's not that either. It's this rugged determination that we will not renounce our faith. It's this rugged determination that we will finish the course. It's this rugged determination that we will not give up, but we will follow Jesus all the way until the end. It is actually another way. The world may tell you, just be patient, just be passive. The world may tell you, just do something, just be aggressive and go find something to do, attack somebody. But this kind of patience is this faith-filled determination that you are following a God who is the maker of heaven and the earth, and he has sent his son Jesus, who is the anointed one, and even in this test you will come through it as through a refiner's fire as pure gold. Because you've got a race to run, and he has every intention of you winning that race. God is with you. He's giving you things. He's exposing things he's put in you so that you can run and finish the race. Perhaps you have heard the phrase, the patience of Job, right? Oh, he's got the patience of Job, or maybe she doesn't have the patience of Job. I don't know. But actually, Job is a real person, and that's a story from the Bible. So Job is a man, if you don't know his story quickly, he's a man who has an amazing life. He's just got houses, lands, family. Basically, this is a person where everything is going his way, right? Wealth, you can't imagine it. He's the picture of everything going your way. And one day, this spiritual being steps out of the crowd and approaches God and says, and God says, you've seen my servant Job, right? He's awesome. He's just great. He praises me all the time. He lives for me. He's a good guy. He's a good man. And this strange and evil spiritual being says to God, well, listen, the only reason Job is like that, the only reason Job thinks so much of you, God, and is happily coming to church on Sundays and singing praise songs, is because you've blessed his life. He's got all this stuff. He's doing great. You start taking away some of his stuff, some of his wealth, and all those praises and all those thank yous are just going to fall away. You're going to see what he's really, really made of. And Job doesn't know any of this. But he's now in the test of his life. And one by one, all these things are taken away from Job. He's left with, not just left with nothing, it's devastating. This is the greatest test one could possibly imagine. And for the first couple of chapters in the book of Job, and the story of Job, Job stays with God. He stays right there. And then he finally reaches a breaking point where he says, I curse the day that I was born. And God forbid that any of us have ever been in a test like that, where that's what we said. Or maybe you have. I curse the day that I was born. Eventually, Job gets a place where he accuses God. God, you are reckless. God, you are being unfair. In fact, God, I think you are corrupt. You've messed up here, God, big time, and I want an answer. I want an answer. As you read through the rest of the story, Job's test does not lead to an answer. What Job is able to do is to live in peace. Through all that has happened to him, he is able to live in peace and in awe of God, in wonder of God, in praise of the Father. In praise of the Father. And Job becomes a person who becomes a living example of the wisdom of God. Someone in whom God can trust his wisdom. And that's Job's story. God, by the way, is compassionate. God does know that we suffer. This suffering will come to an end. This test will come to an end. But will we make it to the end of the test? Will we stand strong? Will we stand firm. Here's what else we need to know. We need to know what God has in mind. When we are being tested, we need to know, what is God doing? What's God thinking? What's going on? What does he have in mind? Here's the two things that James reminds us of. He says, one of the things that God has in mind when when these tests are going on is that he is intending to make us whole people, a complete person. Again, from the Bible Project, guys, I love this little summary. James, the author of the book of James that we're referring to today, James knows that most of us live as fractured people with large inconsistencies in our character. All of us are more compromised than what we would like to admit. But God is on a mission to restore fractured people and make them whole. To make it more personal, God is on a mission to take this fractured person and to make me whole. And that's what he intends to do, and that's what he is all about. Testing is the way that God makes us whole people, where wholeness is defined not by the world's definition of well-being, but here wholeness is defined by Christ-likeness. By being transformed into his image, I have been made whole. You have been made whole as you and I become more and more like Jesus, more and more like him. It's not just a maturing of our character, it's a filling up of our character and rounding us off and rounding us out. So every part is coming together so that we might be whole and made whole. If you want some specifics, like for example, there's 1 Corinthians 13, right? Now some of us know these words. You're probably going to recognize them when I read them because they're often read at weddings. It's called the love chapter. Aren't you kind of excited already? Did you even know the Bible had something called the love chapter? It's like, oh, well, cool. I didn't know there was a love chapter. 1 Corinthians 13. All right, and here we're described, we get these kind of qualities, right? Patience, that love is patient, kind, not envying, not boastful, not proud, not dishonoring, not self-seeking, and not easily angered, keeping no record of wrongs, not delighting in evil, but rejoicing with the truth, always protecting, always trusting, always hopeful, always persevering. Now, you know why we read that at weddings? Not because it's beautiful, but because we expect the husband and wife, these two humans standing right here, we actually expect them to act like this. You know, I mean, the thing about 1 Corinthians 13, it is a beautiful passage. It's so beautiful, we write it down on a very pretty card, and then we put it on a refrigerator to be held up by a magnet. And we said, that's just so beautiful. We totally have lost the fact that this description is actually supposed to describe me. That Dale is patient, that Dale is kind, that Dale doesn't envy, that Dale is not boastful or proud. This is actually how I'm supposed to be. This is actually supposed to describe you and your character. And the tests that we go through is God's way of bringing about these things in us. Wow, just that list. And I actually had to get it down to just this little piece. There's a lot there. And this is what our Father is doing in us. Actually, James actually adds the little phrase, so that we are lacking nothing. This is a divine pattern that God has given to us. I like something C.S. Lewis said when he described getting dressed in the light. He said, sometimes when we get dressed in the morning, when I was a kid, I shared a bedroom with my younger brother, and I couldn't turn the light on because it would wake him up. So I had to get dressed in the dark. Now, I don't know why I didn't take my clothes out the night before and put them in the bathroom or something. I don't know why, but anyways, So more than one occasion, I came out of my bedroom that I share with my brother, where I just got dressed in the dark with mismatched clothes, buttons that didn't line up, and I blame my brother even to this day for this whole terrible mess. And I was trying to get dressed for the light while I was still in the dark. As people who are anticipating the coming of Jesus, and another day in another place. We are getting dressed today for the light of another place. And so we need to pay attention what's going on during the times of our testing. Here's what else he intends to do with all of this testing. He reminds us that he intends to come again. That's what Advent is all about. It's about coming, the coming of Jesus. He came once and he's coming again. That's why James says, you know what? This idea that Jesus is coming again is like what happens when people do farming. I'm not a farmer. Most of us here are not. Maybe we've come from farming families. But there's a harvest that we anticipate. We're going to live through the seasons of the rain and the dryness. We're going to break up the ground. Then we're going to plant the seed. Then the rains are going to come. And with the right blend of rain and sunny days, we're going to experience a harvest. Planting the seeds, waiting for the sun, hoping in the harvest. That's what life is like. And that's who we are. We're farmers. The point is not the length of the waiting. It's the need to remain firm and steadfast while we wait, establishing our hearts and not giving way to doubt. That's why I think we like this verse so much. I don't think I've ever met a Christian who did not like Romans 8:28. And we know that in all things God works for the good with those who love him, who have been called according to this purpose. We know that God is about something good with us, and he intends to come back again. He intends to come back again. You know, as we wrap this up today, I thought about how I was going to conclude this talk. And I decided to conclude it with the application that James makes. And we'll take it right out of chapter 5, where I just read a minute ago. I thought, well, if it's good for James, it's good for us. All right? So here's how he does it. You may not have caught this. He's talking about being tested, right? He's talking about the patience of Job, right? He's talking about the farming and the waiting on the harvest like we wait on the second coming of Jesus. And then he makes this application in verse number 9. So don't grumble or complain against one another, brothers and sisters, or you will be judged. The judge is standing at the door. You see, we're reminded here that the tests that we go through aren't just about us. We live in a community. And when I'm going through a test, those who walk with me know that I'm going through a test. And when you're walking through a test, because we live in community together, we know each other, we're like a family, we know that you're going through a test, and we walk through this together. And our responses are also shared with the community that we live in. And as you and I both know, you don't have to raise your hand here, but sometimes when we're being tested, it brings out the best in us, and sometimes we're being tested, it brings out the worst in us. You can go ahead and say ouch if you feel like it's appropriate. All right? And so James says, testing basically is not fun. And you're going to want to complain, you want to grumble against many times, specifically some particular person. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't judge lest you be judged. Don't burn bridges. Don't give a piece of your mind. All right, some of the best advice I ever gave or was ever given was I was ready to go in and tell my employer just exactly what I thought of him and give him a piece of my mind. My friend said, you don't have a lot of pieces to give up, so you better not give any away. He said, and really he just said, that's probably not going to help, and he was right. I was ready to go in there and burn every bridge that we had. And he said, no, don't do that. That was good advice. Don't judge unless you be judged. The coming of the Lord is near, and the coming of Jesus, he is also the judge for us as his followers. So be careful. You may be opening the door right after Christ the judge has arrived, hearing us complaining and criticizing our brothers and sisters in Christ. One last story. So when I was a senior in college, I went to a small college, a small Christian college. And you were a senior, it wasn't really a dorm. It was more like a house on the campus. Just 8 rooms, 8 rooms and like a sitting area, like no kitchen or anything like that. So 8 rooms. And so I was in this house-type dormitory with the 7 other seniors. I'm a last senior student. I get to live in this place. Now, all the other dormitories, the Christian college, I said, so this makes sense in that context. So the other dormitories, men's dorms and women's dorms, no co-ed dorms, but all the other have co-ed seating areas, like living room type areas where men and women can visit together in these designated places, all right? But because our dorm was so small, our sitting area could not be co-ed, men only. The 8 of us guys thought that was not fair. The other dorms, the other men's dorms have sitting areas where the girls could come and we could talk or, have conversation, but not in ours. It was being punished for being in the small 8-person dorm. That just didn't seem right. And so we put together a petition and we sent it to the school administration and said, we want you to reverse this decision. And they gave us their decision, which was no. So in a meeting with the 8 of us, one evening, while we were talking about how we're going to respond to this injustice of not being allowed to have that co-ed seating area, it was my turn to give the speech on how wrong this was and what our plans were going to be to take down the administration when the dean of men walked in the door. Unknown to me, he was standing right outside the door listening to everything I was saying. And so he walks in, and he gives me a piece of his mind. And I thought, and for purposes of this talk today, that dean of men was like Jesus. And here I was complaining against my brother and sister, well, just brothers in this particular case, and criticizing them and just going on and on about them and saying not such nice things about them when Jesus, also known as the dean of men, walked in and heard me. Remember, you and I are going to be tested. And we're going to be tempted to complain and grumble and be overcome by our doubts. Pass the test. Stop complaining. Love each other. Jesus is coming soon. Jesus is coming soon. Let's pray. Father, I thank you, oh God, that today it comes right down to this. We all know what it's like to be tested. We all know what it's like to be in that place where, seriously, we're wondering, can I keep on believing in God? Can I keep on trusting Him? As I did in the days when everything was going so well. Can I stand up under this test one more day? And I pray, Father, for my brothers and sisters, for all of us who right now are going through a severe trial, and our trust in you has been shaken. Help us. Spirit of God, help us. You said that you wouldn't allow us to be tested more than what we could bear, and that you would make ways for us to experience your comfort and your strength as we walk through seasons of testing, that we might come through. We will come through, refined as by fire, as pure gold. It was there, it is there, because you put it there. And you will bring us through. In Jesus' name, amen.